Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023. Today I want to talk about Saturday's full moon, which is actually a partial eclipse. So that's Saturday, October the 28th. So in a few days' time, we've got this full moon, and I want to discuss how it might affect us. And I'll be looking at how it might affect us as individuals, and also how it might affect the world, and what parts of the world it might hit the most. I suppose we're thinking particularly of current trouble spots, which is of course Ukraine and the Middle East. So I'll give consideration to that. This full moon partial eclipse doesn't strike me as being particularly pleasant. Sort of more of a negative than a positive. I think for some of us it could be quite disruptive in a global sense, not particularly harmonious. I don't think there's much that's particularly nice about this full moon, but I'll see if I can find something positive to say about it. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023. So let's look at the astrology for today. So here we have the position of the planets today, set for New York at noon. Now, that full moon that you see on the top right, that just reminds us that I'm going to later be talking about the full moon on Saturday. So obviously there's not a full moon today. So what's going on? I think the first thing to point out is that like yesterday, it's a very negative chart. The planets are in water signs and earth signs. There's nothing in air and fire. Okay, all we can find in air is South Node in Libra. If you're into Chiron in Aries, but that's irrelevant. And sort of as I said yesterday, the water signs, the earth signs, they are the negative signs. It's a time to reflect. It's not really a time to be taking the initiative. We need to observe what's going on around us. We need to use our feelings, and also with the planets in Earth. It's what we can touch, our sensations. But in terms of the positive sides of things, when I say positive, that means being outgoing, being assertive, whether it's through action or through words. We should be careful there. If in doubt, just don't say it. Now, as far as the actual aspects going on at the moment, it's not particularly impressive. The moon is in Pisces, opposition Venus. Moon in Pisces. We've still got that emotional flux. We might feel emotionally we're always sort of moving from one state of being to another state of being, and there may not be any intermediate states. We just move from one feeling to another. But it is opposition, Venus and Virgo. We're trying to take into account the material world. We're trying to focus on those details. The details are really annoying. And we can't get the details right, but we still have to worry about the details, which is really, I won't say a recipe for disaster, but it's a recipe for frustration. On the plus side, though, the moon, there's the moon at 20 Pisces, is making a sextile aspect to Uranus in Taurus. Uranus, sort of planet of earthquakes, revolutions, but moon sextile Uranus, that's about surprises. We can spring some gentle surprises on people. They're perhaps not expecting something, and then we give it to them anyway. But I'm talking about gentle surprises. It's certainly not a time for dramatic surprises. As I said, with that complete dominance in water and earth, we want to be sort of receptive. Yeah, certainly not a time for causing chaos. So that's pretty much what's going on today. It's overall not going to be a particularly exciting day. I will be looking at the I Ching a bit later, and that sort of might give a different view. But maybe it's good that it's not exciting. Perhaps it's a day for relaxing. It's a day for keeping a low profile. It's a day for listening and feeling. Now, as far as my forecasts for the 12 signs are concerned, they do reflect some of the things going on. I try to be positive. They do reflect that moon making a sextile to Uranus very often. They also reflect the fact that the moon is opposition Venus. We really can't avoid that. So let's do my forecast for the 12 signs. Okay. Right. So here we go. These are my forecasts for today, which is Wednesday, October the 25th, 2023. Aries, you don't have a set of single strengths that never changes. From day to day, your strong points change, and today you're at your strongest when you keep a low profile, but all the time listening and watching. You'll gain valuable insights into other people and their weaknesses, insights that I think you can make use of sooner rather than later. Taurus, there are things you'd like to do, but your position isn't strong enough. Perhaps there's a knowledge deficit, or you don't have enough support. So it's probably best to accept the situation, at least in the short term. You can, though, work on your deficit and maybe get some outside advice. It's a situation, though, where timing is everything. Gemini, it seems that a lot of things are set in stone. Things are going in a particular way, and there doesn't seem to be much that you can do to change things. But don't underestimate yourself. If something isn't right, and you're sure of your facts, then your sudden initiatives can make all the difference, and your key advantages will be spontaneity and surprise. Now, I do seem to be contradicting myself there because I've just said that this is not a day for sort of taking the initiative, but maybe in the case of Gemini, they can get away with it. Cancer, you find yourself speculating on what's true and what's merely fantasy. In the process, you might even feel suspicious, almost to the point of playing around with conspiracy theories. But maybe you're straying too far from reality. You have to consider what's right in front of you and stick to what you can see and touch. Leo, just because no one can see you doesn't mean that you're doing nothing. You can diligently work away on one thing and slowly but surely get to grips with the whole project. And once you understand what's going on, you have a chance to completely change the situation. It's about giving people what they don't expect. Virgo, although there continues to be an emphasis on relationships, things have probably moved past the point of usefulness. There could be drama and excitement, but in many respects it's just window dressing. So don't take anyone too seriously, and promises and commitments should be taken with a pinch of salt. Libra. You might find yourself in a situation where you're expected to get everything right, but you just can't manage it. Not because you're lazy or careless, but because the instructions just don't make sense. This means that if you're told to do something, you must insist on getting total clarification. And perhaps you can also ask for a demonstration, so someone can show you how it's done. Scorpio. It doesn't matter how powerful the engine is if the gears are stuck in neutral. Just a spinning of wheels with no movement. So when you start applying your considerable strengths, make sure that you really are having an impact. If you concentrate on the wrong areas, you could end up achieving very little. Sagittarius. You do have more choice, and some of the things that have recently been holding you back are starting to loosen their hold. But still, you have to consider the past and the obligations that come with it. And at some stage, a long-standing routine, which you almost take for granted, will have to be changed or even dropped. Capricorn. You can if you want, but you don't have to. After all, it's not a day for obligations, and your efforts in any one area are unlikely to have spectacular results. But this view of today's opportunities should be a relief. You don't have to bust a gut trying to make the most of supposed opportunities. Aquarius. You're able to leave your mark, but first you have to interact and give everyone a taste of your originality and genius, and a couple of words might be all it takes. Elsewhere, it's probably a bad idea to make financial plans and projects, because it's a fluid situation where assumptions could change very quickly. Pisces. You still have a lot of control, but not as much as yesterday, and perhaps your grip on things is starting to loosen. It's not a problem, it might even be a good thing. At some stage, you need to move on to new pastures and new opportunities. Yet, at the last moment, you can do something that leaves everyone speechless. Okay, so I'm now going to move to the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for people watching this video? I threw 3 coins in the air 6 times, and the hexagram I got was hexagram number 60, which is a limitation. We need to be aware of our limitations. We can't do everything. And this kind of ties in with what I was saying, with this great emphasis on, on water and earth, astrologically. This is not a time for taking the initiative. We have to be aware of our boundaries. We have to be aware of what we can do and what we cannot do. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we have to be completely draconian in the way we treat ourselves. This is, you don't have to go on a fast or sort of take massive amounts of exercise, or limit your pleasure to the point where it really hurts, unless of course you're doing something you enjoy, which is also very dangerous. It should be a natural limitation. That is the way it should be. It's got to feel right. It's a limitation you see with gravity. It pulls things down naturally. We don't have to struggle against gravity. It's that kind of limitation. And if we do that, if we're aware of those natural limitations, I think we're going to feel, pretty comfortable. We're not going to be stressed out. We're not going to feel we're missing any opportunities. We're just going to accept the situation. Now, this hexagram 60 limitation, it does move, and because you've got this fourth line, broken line, moves to a broken line, and the hexagram it moves to is hexagram 58, which is the joyous, at least that's how the Wilhelm translation translates the title. You can see here that you have got the symbol for a lake, that trigram starting at the bottom, unbroken, unbroken, broken is a lake. So you've got a lake on a lake, water on water, a lake. And you've got the image there of emotional flow. But there is a certain contradiction in this hexagram, because we are told to be firm. We are told to, stick to our principles and not allow events to just overwhelm us. So, the joyous 58, it is about enjoyment. It's about having fun. But if we have fun without thinking what we're doing, it's not going to stay joyous for very long. We're going to sort of sink into a swamp. Because this I know this hexagram is about a lake, but it can also be about a swamp. And, we could get stuck in just, I don't know, a fairly sort of tedious type of enjoyment. We do it because we can, but it becomes less and less fun. And there's also the danger that we overdo it. We try to enjoy ourselves too much and get ourselves into trouble. So we need to have limits. We need to be firm with ourselves when we're enjoying ourselves, whatever we're doing. So I don't know, if you're going to a bar or a pub, make sure that you don't drink too much. Know what the limit is. Know what your limit is. Don't stay out too late. But it shouldn't be a problem. It's not going to be really sort of. It's not going to be so painful. Imposing that kind of limit on yourself, because I think we're going to naturally know our limits, and I think we're naturally going to know when to stop. And yes, we might feel that other people are trying to push us in a particular direction, but we'll know. We'll know when we need to stop, when we need to draw the line, when we need to say enough is enough. So overall, looking at the I Ching for today, I think it's okay. I don't think we're going to get ourselves into trouble, because I just think we'll know when to stop, and it'll just be very organic and natural. Okay, so now I want to look at Saturday's full moon. So it is a partial eclipse. So let's okay, so full moon. Okay, so here here's a full moon. Here's the full moon set for London. October the 28th, 2023. So if you're in London, this full moon is at around 9:24 p.m. So if you're in New York, for example, it will be 5 hours earlier. It'll be at 4:24 p.m. on Saturday. If you're in Los Angeles, it'll be at 1:24 p.m. on Saturday. So yeah, so this is the full moon set for London's. It doesn't really matter the fact at the moment. I don't really want to focus too much on where it's set for. So in terms of understanding what this full moon is, I suppose we can be quite general to start with. a full moon is about realization. It should be, it can be. That's when things are full, when we get the light of the sun shines on a disk of a moon and it gets reflected back to us. We can see the truth if we look hard enough. So if there's some truth that we've been avoiding, it's there for us. We might still choose to ignore it, but if we have our eyes open, we can certainly see the truth. And I think this is what we might experience on Saturday and beyond. How long does a full moon last for? Well, it's certainly 2 weeks. That would be from perhaps October the 28th to the next new moon, which off the top of my head I think is November the 13th. So it's kind of first half of November. You might feel the influence of this full moon. So yes, we see the truth. Now, if you are an optimist, you will notice that the full moon is conjunct Jupiter. So you can see that the moon is in Taurus, 5-9 Taurus, and it's moving to a conjunction of Jupiter. That is really good. Full moon conjunct Jupiter, that suggests on the surface a fortunate full moon, and I think it will be fortunate for many of us if we act on what we can see. The sun, with this full moon, the sun is in Scorpio. Scorpio is that sort of heavy, emotional, brooding, subjective sign. Okay, I know I'm being a bit negative on Scorpio, but I don't really mean it that way. And so it's very subjective, and we're completely focused on this thing, our concern, particularly if we're of an emotional disposition. But then the moon challenges it. The moon in Taurus challenges it. What does the moon in Taurus represent? Now, that moon is strong in its exaltation. It's actually close to its exaltation degree of 3 degrees Taurus. So that moon in Taurus is showing us the material reality of the situation. So let's say we're just not facing reality in terms of money. Scorpio is just really focused on the financial situation, but not being real about it, just getting really emotional about it. But the moon in Taurus says, hey, it's like this. This is the way it is. And if you can accept the truth, even if it's bad, and whether it's about money, about relationships, whatever, if you can see the truth, you can accept the truth, then you might find that after October the 28th, you have a certain amount of good fortune, because the moon in Taurus is conjunct Jupiter in Taurus. That is very lucky. So that is, I suppose, looking at the full moon in the best possible light. But there are other things going on with this full moon which need to be considered. Mars is at 11:23 Scorpio. Jupiter is at 11:14 Taurus. So this full moon coincides with an exact Mars-Jupiter opposition. Now, I think it was the English astrologer Charles Carter who, when he wrote a lot, mid-20th century, and he wrote books on aspects, and he said about the Mars opposition Jupiter that it's actually the worst aspect in the book. And so this is kind of separate from the full moon, having this Mars opposition Jupiter. But because the Mars-Jupiter opposition is exact at the same time as the full moon, it's kind of linked into the full moon. It's baked into the full moon. And so this may tell us something about what early November is really going to be about. Mars Jupiter is, Mars is about assertion, aggression. Jupiter opposition doesn't know when to stop. So when you start getting involved in a fight or something aggressive, I'm not talking necessarily a physical fight, whatever you're involved in, it just doesn't, there's a situation where you can get into a situation where it just doesn't stop. And, this is going to be difficult anyway at the end of the month. Okay, perhaps less for individuals than for organizations. As individuals, we have a lot of freedom, but, if you're involved in a war, whether in Ukraine or Middle East, Gaza, or whatever, and you've got Mars Jupiter opposition at the time of a full moon, that's not good. I'll be talking about that a bit later. So we have to be very careful about not getting into fights and arguments after this full moon, because if we do get involved in a fight or an argument, it could just go on, and worse still, it could escalate, and really that is the last thing we need. But Jupiter makes things bigger. So Mars, the aggression of Mars, Jupiter just piling it on, and matters are not helped by the fact that you've got Mercury here. So you've got actually Mars conjunct Mercury opposition Jupiter. Mars Mercury. A couple of days ago, I was talking about Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, and he had Sun on the Mercury-Mars midpoint, and I really did associate that with his angry speeches. Yes, they might have been quite effective if you were in Germany. As a propaganda minister, he was, in his own way, he was effective. Of course, if you were outside Germany, if you were not, they might not have seemed so good, his speeches. You had to be on his wavelength. But this full moon is, is at the time when you've got Jupiter opposition Mercury and Mars. And this full moon is quite close to the Mercury-Mars midpoint. The Sun is conjunct Mars, Sun it's conjunct Mercury, Moon is conjunct Jupiter, and Mercury-Mars is very sort of aggressive language, polemic, people accusing each other of things and just not knowing when to stop, not knowing when to stand down. Yes, using inflammatory language. Politicians have to be really careful. This world is very delicate at the moment. You can't just shoot your mouth off. But I think with this full moon, we could see people shooting their mouth off with, Mercury, Mars. Whether it's, I don't know. Biden sometimes says things that, he shouldn't be saying. That just really are a mess. It can cause a real mess diplomatically. But he's not the only one. Politicians, whoever they are, can say things in anger. They might be angry, but just can't help themselves, and that just stirs the whole thing up. And so for us as ordinary people, we have to be careful what we say, and we don't want to get involved in big arguments. If we hear someone saying something that offends us, do we have to join in? Do we have to be offended? Okay, we might be offended privately, but do we really have to go over the top? I think the answer is probably no. I think we need a bit of restraint here. In the last few days of October into November, I think that is going to be. That's going to be very important. So those are some of the themes of the full moon. I'm not going to go through the full moon and how it influences all the 12 signs. I don't think it's necessary. I think that this kind of full moon, it's more going to impact the group than individuals. I don't think as individuals we should be necessarily afraid of this full moon, but we certainly need to be aware of it. And also with this full moon, it reveals things to us. Listen to what people are saying. Listen to what people are saying. Listen to people watch how people assert themselves. Then you'll know Then you'll know whether or not you can trust them. They'll be revealing their hand, and if we open our eyes, this full moon can give us real knowledge. Okay, so as far as the wider world is concerned, we could set up a map. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an astro map to show, what parts of the world, might this full moon have a lot of impact on. This technique, astrocartography, it's somewhat hit and miss. In fact, it's very hit and miss. But still, we might see some interesting stuff. Now, what strikes me, as I look at, the Middle East, is this is the Pluto line. This is the line. This yellow line is where Pluto, all the places where Pluto is opposition the descendant. And you can see that this Pluto actually goes pretty close, almost goes through Gaza. In fact, if we relocate this full moon to Gaza, you can actually see what I mean. So this is the full moon, not set for London, but set for Gaza. What do we notice about this? Well, obviously Pluto is almost exactly on the descendant. And it's the same. If I were to set this chart for Tel Aviv, it would be pretty similar, because Israel's a small country, and so Pluto on the 7th, people having all sorts of projections about their enemy, and Pluto on the 7th, is about conflict, and it is about obsession. And it is about sort of revenge, and so yes, I think this could, there is. We already know this full moon's going to have an impact on Gaza. If there was no full moon, there's no credit on me for saying, oh yeah, this full moon is going to have a big impact on Gaza. Well, I should have said that a month ago, because we now know that's what's happening. But okay, this full moon confirms that Gaza is very much going to be in the public eye. Now, another place to consider, which we can also see in the astro map, is I just want to look at the Middle East. Again, if we say look at I'll just look at the so there's the Middle East. I've already pointed out that Pluto is on the descendant across this line. As you can see the line, it goes through Norway, Sweden. Looks like Western Poland, Romania, then through Turkey, and then it hits the Gaza Strip and so forth. But then you see, look at this thick line here, very thick line here. Look where it's going through. It's going through Dubai, and that is, of course, the Straits of Hormuz. So now the Straits of Hormuz, if you don't know, is a lot of oil tankers go through the Straits of Hormuz. So we've all this worry about Middle East and oil supplies, and I've heard people say that oh, the Middle East crisis, it's okay, provided the Straits of Hormuz don't get affected. Well, if we relocate the chart for Dubai, and Dubai is kind of on the Straits of Hormuz, so let's okay, we'll reset the chart for Dubai. So this is set for Dubai. This is effectively set for the Straits of Hormuz. You can see that the midheaven is at 10 degrees 36 Taurus. Jupiter is at 11:14 Taurus, and you've got a Mercury-Mars conjunction on the IC. So that's potentially quite serious. This line, Mars on the Jupiter-Mars opposition on the midheaven. It doesn't just go through. It doesn't just go through the Straits of Hormuz, but obviously it goes through Iran. There's Iran. We got sort of lots of lines going through here, but Straits of Hormuz, and then you can see the Mars-Jupiter line going right through the country. There's the full moon is on the midheaven and IC through here. So Iran is strongly hit by this full moon, as well as the whole Gulf, Straits of Hormuz, and so that's something that we need to look at. Again, people have been saying this already, political analysts. So all I'm really saying is that when political analysts saying, oh, well, look out for Iran, look out for the Straits of Hormuz, look out for the Persian Gulf, this is confirmed by the astrology. So I thought I'd better just point that out. So that's my view of the full moon. Overall, I don't think this full moon is particularly pleasant. Yes, it's nice that the moon is conjunct Jupiter, but you have to look at the whole thing. Mars is opposition Jupiter. This full moon is pretty close to the Jupiter opposition Mercury-Mars conjunction. So I think that some of the themes of this full moon are going to be aggression, anger, propaganda, people using bad words, people insulting each other, verbal hostility. And yes, the full moon is about realizing the truth, but what kind of truth are we going to realize? We may realize the truth that the situation is actually quite difficult. That's the full moon. But as I said, as individuals, may not affect us much, particularly if we're not living in a war zone. We can just privately open our eyes, see the truth, and whether it's good or bad, we can benefit from that truth. So that's all I want to say about this full moon. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.